To understand World War II better, we must take a look at what happened before the war began. Although technically not a World War II battle, it had profound effects on its combatants. Welcome to the Khalkhin River, also known Mongolian as Khalkhin Gol. It was the site of the battles of Khalkhin Gol, a series of battles between the Soviet Union and Mongolia against the Empire of Japan and their puppet state, Manchukuo. The first confrontation happened May 11th. A group of Mongolian cavalrymen wandered into the disputed area in search of food for their horses when suddenly they were attacked by Manchurian cavalry. After the Manchurians inflicted heavy casualties, the Mongolians were forced to retreat. The Japanese had different views on expanding their sphere of influence. Some, mostly the Imperial Army, followed the doctrine of Hokushinron, which stated that the regions of Manchuria and Siberia were of interest to Japan. Others, such as those in the Imperial Navy, believed that instead of Manchuria and Siberia, they should conquer Southeast Asia and the Pacific, a doctrine known as Nanshinron. Japanese imperialism at the time followed the Hokushinron doctrine, which led to the fighting in Khalkhin Gol. Two days later, the Manchurians dug into their newly captured positions. However, they weren't expecting an attack. Meanwhile, the Mongols were building up their forces. Fighting breaks out between the two combatants again as the Mongols attack Manchurian-held positions. This time, they are better prepared. The Mongolians were able to drive off the Manchus, forcing them to retreat to their friendly lines. Future skirmishes would follow as both sides attack each other repeatedly, gaining and losing territory. For example, a reconnaissance regiment of the Japanese 23rd Infantry Division, led by Lieutenant Colonel Yaozo Azuma, attacked the same positions just a day later. They were supported by a sister regiment of the same division. The Mongolians had to abandon their positions and retreat again. Azuma was later stationed in the disputed area to repel any intruders. Furious at the actions of the Japanese, the Soviets began supporting their Mongolian allies. They attacked the area again in greater numbers on May 28th. Meanwhile, Azuma and his men attack the sites of the Soviet Mongolian force, and then attempt to cut off their support. Unfortunately, after heavy fighting and a refusal to surrender, Azuma's forces were decimated on the 29th of May. Azuma himself was killed in combat. After the skirmishes, both sides began building their forces in the area. Confrontations in the disputed area gradually increased in intensity. On the 27th of June, the Japanese launched an air raid on the Tamsak Bulak Air Base. The air raid was successful, with more than 100 Soviet planes destroyed. However, the attack had been ordered by the Kwangtung Army, the army group tasked with maintaining order within northeastern China, without permission from the Imperial Japanese Army, causing relations to sour between them. Throughout the span of June, the Japanese have been receiving reports of troop movement across the river and small-scale attacks on Manchurian units. By the end of the month, Michitaro Komatsubara, commander of the Japanese 23rd Infantry Division, was given orders by his superiors to expel the intruders. The Japanese launched an assault on Soviet positions. They first need to advance across the Kalka River, then destroy any Soviet resistance on the Baisangan Hill on the west bank. Once that is done, the force was to link up with their comrades attacking from the east bank, creating a pincer movement and ultimately encircling the Soviets. Meanwhile, the Japanese forces in the east bank attacked the Soviets at night on the 2nd of July in order to avoid artillery strikes. They were unable to break through Soviet lines and lost half of their tanks in the fighting. Both of these forces were led by Lieutenant General Yasuoka Masomi. The resulting counterattack led by a young Georgy Zhukov a week later depleted their fighting capability, and because of that, they failed to link up and fulfill their objectives. The East Bank forces were dissolved, and Yasuoka was relieved of his duties. And that concludes the documentary. I would like to apologize for the documentary not encompassing all the battle, because I was close to the deadline and my program wasn't working. But hopefully, you received a good understanding of what the documentary is all about. But in the end, the Soviets were able to drive off the Japanese from the disputed territory. The Japanese had to rethink their strategy on fulfilling their imperial ambitions, and they learned from their mistakes at Khalkhin Gol, so they decided to draw up plans for an invasion southward, down in the Pacific.